When people visit our shop for the first time, they generally have a lot of questions about electric bikes. And today I wanted to make a video covering some of the most common ones. The first one I'd like to cover is, what is an electric bike and how does it work? So in its basic form, an electric bicycle is a bicycle. It has pedals, wheels, handlebars, etc. And you can still pedal it just like a normal non-electric bike, but where it differs is that it has an electric motor and a battery which provide power. Now, this power can be delivered in a couple different ways. In the most rudimentary form, you have a throttle, which basically you twist it similar to a scooter or a motorcycle, and it just gives you some help. But the most common one that we offer uses a technology called pedal assist. So basically, you just pedal the bike and it provides assistance. Kind of makes you feel stronger than you are. And we really like that because it still retains all the principles of riding a bike. You're always pedaling it, you're always getting exercise. It's a nice mix between your power and the bike's power. The next question I'd like to cover is, how long does the battery last? Now, different bikes have all sorts of different batteries on them, but as a general rule, you could usually find most batteries are going to last somewhere between 20 to 50 miles, but there's going to be some variance up and down there. Some bikes will even come with 2 batteries, so you can effectively double your range. But you can think of it as your range is really going to vary depending on the terrain that you're riding on, how heavy the rider is, how much power you're asking of the bike, as in what assistance level you're using, or how much throttle you might be using in the cases when you're using a throttle. I should also mention, as a related topic, that charging the battery works similar to a laptop. You just plug it into the wall, and it usually takes 4 or so hours to charge the battery fully. The next question is, are they legal? We have a shop in New York where for a long time, the legality of electric bikes has been all over the place. Still, technically speaking, New York State as a whole has not really clearly defined the rules on electric bikes, but most other states have. California was one of the first, and the legislation that was introduced in California has kind of tried to become this model legislation for the rest of the states. New York City has legalized electric bikes, specifically 20-mile-an-hour pedal assist bikes. But generally speaking, the electric bike industry is still in its early days, so a lot of these laws are kind of catching up with the technology as it's introduced. In my experience, the enforcement of these laws has been pretty minimal, but you just want to be mindful of what the laws are in your current jurisdiction. A good website to check out for all the recent updates on all the laws is People for Bikes, and I'll link to that in the description. They also have really great information on where you can ride your electric bike. And for the most part, you can ride an electric bike anywhere you can ride a traditional non-electric bike, with some exceptions. Next, do I need insurance? Now, this comes up all the time. Sometimes people say, do I need insurance? Do I need registration? They're thinking of it more like a car or a motorcycle. But the reality is, you don't need any of that. It's not required. Now, this could change in certain states or that sort of thing, but as a general rule, it's treated like a bicycle. That's a really great thing because it saves you a lot of money. Now, you might want to consider getting insurance for your bike, even though it's not required, because it's a great way to be able to cover the bike for theft or damage and that sort of thing. One company that we generally recommend is called Velosurance. Now, you might also want to check with your homeowners or renters insurance, but I will note that most of those have an exclusion for anything that includes a motor. So you'll want to talk to them and probably get it in writing if they do say that they will cover it. Number 5 is, how fast do electric bikes go? And there's basically 2 different speeds. Most electric bikes in the US at least go 20 miles an hour, although in Europe and some other places it's 15 miles an hour. But there are some other bikes that go up to 28 miles an hour, and these are called speed pedelecs, and in certain other countries outside of the US, they have special registration requirements. But in the US, there's just some different restrictions on where you can use them at times. The next question is one that's been coming up a lot is, do I need to wear a helmet? And technically speaking, most electric bikes don't require a helmet, although we usually recommend it. There are certain places that require helmets for all bike and electric bike usage, so you might want to check that out. And there's also several places, including California, that require helmets for bikes that go 28 miles an hour. Another common question is, how much do they cost? Now, you might find bikes out there for as cheap as $600–700, but I could pretty much guarantee they're not going to hold up too well. Most of the bikes we offer in our shop range between $2,000 to $6,000, but they can go up to $10,000 to $11,000. Now, you might be wondering, how would somebody even consider spending that much money on an electric bicycle, which most people will regard as just a bicycle? From our experience, when people are investing what would be considered an expensive electric bike, many people are using them as a car replacement, or they're just really looking to get a lot of different comforts out of the bike or different features that you might have to spend a little bit more for. You know, some of the more expensive bikes might have a belt drive or an internal hub. They'll have suspension. Maybe they'll have a longer lasting battery, better quality parts. So I wouldn't just totally disregard these higher priced bikes. You really just have to consider what your use scenario is. And I could pretty much guarantee, even if you do spend for a more expensive bike, it's going to be less expensive than using a car to get around. Another is, how much do they weigh? Now, in our experience, most electric bikes weigh somewhere between 40 and 60 or so pounds, but some of them can go up a little bit higher when they have additional features, batteries, or maybe a cargo bike, which you can find upwards of 100 pounds. But I wouldn't really focus too much on the weight factor, because when you have assistance, it really doesn't impact you so much. For me, I think it's more important to focus on some of the comforts of the bike and the features and make sure that those will meet your needs instead of being too focused on weight, and you might end up cutting some of those things that might be important to you. The next question is about service. Most people ask, how much maintenance do they require? Really, most electric bikes don't really require much more maintenance than a normal non-electric bike. However, you might find if you're riding faster, you're going up bigger hills and that sort of thing, your brake pads might wear out faster. Certain bikes, you might find that the drivetrain wears out a little bit faster, so you might end up having to replace the chain or make adjustments a little bit sooner than you would otherwise on a non-electric bike. And in that case, many people, if they're riding high mileage, they might opt to have something like a belt drive or an internally geared hub, because those will generally last a lot longer between maintenance intervals. But you should be comforted in knowing that most traditional bike shops should be comfortable with most of the maintenance required on an electric bike, but some electric bikes can be a little bit more complicated when they have a motor in the rear wheel and some of the wiring is not really so dialed in. So we primarily focus on bikes with the motor system in the center, primarily from Bosch, and it really makes all the maintenance very simple. Now, outside of the traditional bike maintenance, tires, brakes, drivetrain, the motor system can occasionally need updates, or sometimes there are certain things that you might encounter, but it's not too much outside of the traditional bike maintenance. The last question is, what type of electric bikes are there? And people are often surprised by the answer, because for every non-electric bike out there, there's an electric variant. Whether it be a folding bike, commuter bike, cargo bike if you want to carry kids, or maybe you want to transport goods for your business. Or even these days, we're starting to see these new emerging fields of electric road bikes, or very common these days is electric mountain bikes, or now we're seeing electric gravel bikes or even recumbents. So pretty much anything you could think of, there's probably that type out there. This was not the case when we started the business, but these days we're seeing this growing more and more. But that being said, we're even seeing some kind of new types of bikes. It's kind of this like all-road, all-terrain type of bike where you can ride on-road, off-road, just really go anywhere, do anything with it. And that tends to be the type of bike that I like the most because I feel like I want one bike just to be able to do most things. Most people want to ride on the street, but they might want to occasionally go explore some dirt roads, off-road trails, that sort of thing. Maybe not hardcore mountain biking, but to be able to handle some of that rougher terrain. And it's pretty cool to be able to offer some bikes that do that. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it to be useful. If you have any additional questions, please leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Maybe I'll make another video discussing some of those questions as well. All right, well, see you soon.